If they're given permission, they're told that they have to pay $20 to $40 each time they meet to have a Bible study.
The owners of a historic farm in Swickley Heights have been waging a battle over whether they're allowed to host Bible studies and other religious events. They say yes. The borough says nope, zoning doesn't allow it. John Delano has been looking into this. John.
Well, Ken, when can you hold a Bible study, a religious gathering, or a worship service on your own property? If you think the answer is anytime I want, because of my religious rights are protected by the First Amendment, well, you might want to live outside Sewickley Heights Borough. A couple from that borough has gone to federal court over this issue. Lawyers from a nonprofit religious rights group in Harrisburg say religious activities are being unconstitutionally prohibited by Sewickley Heights Borough, now in the middle of a property dispute with Teresa and Scott Federoff, who own Dundee Farms.
The idea that the Federoffs were being told that they couldn't have their religious events on their property or even a Bible study on their property seemed too bizarre to be true.
That's what happened last fall when the borough issued a cease and desist order to the Federoffs that specifically listed, quote, Bible study and a night of worship and prayer, a retreat for deep worship, and a Feed My Lambs fundraiser for a Kenyan Christian group.
They've banned the Federoffs from doing any religious fundraisers when other people around the community are permitted to do political fundraisers. They've also prohibited them from having a youth group meeting where children come together and sing religious.
Part of the farm where the Federoffs have held religious activities for about 20 to 40 youth, and in the past have hosted events on Labor Day, picnics for about 100 seminarians. The previous property owner even held religious fundraisers here, including one for Billy Graham. But the borough says no more to that.
No American should be forced to choose between the dictates of the federal government and the tenets of their faith. As I campaigned across the country, faith leaders explained that they were prevented from speaking their minds because of a 1954 rule known as the Johnson Amendment. I spoke about it a lot. Under this rule, if a pastor, priest, or imam speaks about issues of public or political importance, they are threatened with the loss of their tax-exempt status, a crippling financial punishment. Very, very unfair. But no longer. I promised to take action if I want. And to this end, this financial threat against the faith community is over. many of our greatest presidents fought with the media and called them out, oftentimes on their lies.
But not like this. Trump tweeted on Friday, "The fake news media is not my enemy, it is the enemy of the American people." Historians said the closest thing to Trump's tweet could be heard on this secret tape of Richard Nixon.
The press is the enemy. The press is the enemy. The press is the enemy.
Nixon said this privately while reporters probed his misconduct. 45 years later, reporters are chasing leads about Trump, and he hates what he's reading.
Do you think that one media group back there, that one network, will show this crowd? Not one.
Of course, the networks did show the adoring crowds, and the protesters too. Trump's aides are defending his media attacks.
You get about 10% coverage. The next 20 hours is all about Russian spies.
But you don't get to tell us what to do, right?
Nothing's happening.
You don't get to tell us what to do any more than Barack Obama did. Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but I gotta say, he never said that we were an enemy of the people.
Some Republican leaders are joining Democrats in raising alarms about Trump's vitriol.
If you want to preserve democracy as we know it, you have to have a free and many times adversarial press. And without it, I'm afraid that we would lose so much of our individual liberties over time. That's how dictators get started.
UN human rights experts are raising warning flags over legislation being introduced in 19 U.S. states that the UN says target free speech. The bills are cracking down on the right to peaceful assembly and protest that UN experts say violate America's First Amendment protections and international human rights laws. In a statement, Mina Kai and David Kay say these state bills, with their criminalization of assemblies, enhanced penalties, and general stigmatization of protesters, are designed to discourage the exercise of these fundamental rights. Joining me now, human rights attorney and co-founder of the Partnership for Civil Justice, Legal Defense and Education Fund, Mara Verheyden-Hillard. Mara, thank you so much for being here. In your opinion, what are these bills targeting and why?
Right now, what we're seeing all across the United States is a wholesale attack on basic free speech rights. And it is so dangerous, it simply cannot be overstated what's going on. From state to state to state, there are bills being introduced that basically make engaging in free speech activities extremely dangerous. They threaten the ability of people to be able to come together, to be able to speak out. So some of these bills are trying to increase offenses and charges to felonies for what used to be minor misdemeanors. They have bills that are being proposed that would criminalize blocking traffic in ways that are unheard of, so that a demonstration that's in the street, in the streets and the sidewalks, the parklands, suddenly these become criminal in a way that threatens anyone who wants to go out.
To politics now, where President-elect Donald Trump is calling for jail time for individuals who set fire to the American flag, also calling for a loss of citizenship. In fact, he tweeted this earlier today, and I quote, "Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail, exclamation point," end quote. For more on this, I want to bring in Aaron Blake in the Washington Post newsroom in D.C. He's a senior reporter for the newspaper. And Aaron, again, previously, many politicians and Supreme Court justices alike have said that flag burning is defended by the First Amendment. It is a freedom of speech issue, to be sure. Is there a sense of why Donald Trump decided to make this an issue today?
There have been some isolated incidents of flag burning after the election. People apparently unhappy with Trump's election But this really isn't an issue that has come up much, if at all, in the last 10 years. If you look back to the middle of last decade, there was an effort by some to pass a constitutional amendment which would supersede that Supreme Court decision. That's what you'd need to make this a penalty, a crime penalized by jail time or anything else. It had popular support, but not quite as much as you'd need to actually get this moving. And since then, it's been kind of a back burner issue as far as our
we have a First Amendment
goes,
which says that the right of free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of the government. I mean, that was the main kind of speech that tyrants would seek to suppress. Burning the flag is a form of expression. Speech doesn't just mean written words or oral words. It could be semaphore. Burning a flag is a symbol that expresses an idea.
A new law in New Jersey could have serious repercussions for police officers and regular citizens, I'm told. A leaked memo to Bergen County law enforcement reminded them that this new statute applies to all law enforcement officers, including those subject to on-call status. Violation of the statute constitutes a fourth-degree crime.
So what does this mean for law enforcement and the people of New Jersey? Here to weigh in, former NYPD commissioner, author of The Grave Above the Grave. You see it right there. Bernie Carrick, good morning, sir.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How do you react to this?
I think it's outrageous. But more importantly, I think it's dangerous because you're taking the ability away from the cops to possess the rounds they may need in a gun battle. You know, you have off-duty cops that are taking their kids to school, that are going to a movie theater, whatever the case may be. They're now restricted under this rule, under this law, to have less than a 10-round capacity magazine. That's insane. But I think there's a bigger issue, and the bigger issue is the general public, the general citizens of New Jersey, 1.3 million gun owners, legal gun owners, are now have to abide by this same rule, costing New Jersey probably $150 to $200 million. There's 8 million guns and probably another 2 million semi-automatic rifles that are now restricted to 10-round magazines or less. And many of those guns, they can't be altered.
If you're worried about gun violence, and I think everybody is, including me, for sure, you go after the small number of people who are committing it, who are criminals and crazy people. You wouldn't intentionally target legal gun owners who are likely to be law-abiding and, in fact, statistically are law-abiding. So why go after them? What's that about?
That's about taking the guns. That's about taking guns. That's the only thing I can think of. You know, these are legal, law-abiding citizens that have been vetted, that have been background checked, that have all the stuff they need to purchase the weapons. Well, the governor decided we're going to take every magazine in excess of 10 rounds. And basically what that does, that's a lot of magazines.
But why would you, so your goal, if that's your plan, is to disarm legal gun owners, to take the resources from going after, from stop and frisk, trying to find people who shouldn't have guns who possess them, criminals, and go to legal gun owners, it's not really about reducing the crime rate, is it?
No, absolutely not, because, listen, the bad guys don't care about your gun law, and they're going to have magazines that have double the capacity. It doesn't make any difference to them. It's not going to have any impact on reducing crime.
Let's have a look at this. The president making a statement on gun control from yesterday. Roll tape.
A lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. He had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
You know, that was the key sentence there. Take the guns, the firearms first, then go through due process later. I can feel him seething from my, 2 feet away. Andrew Napolitano, the judge, is here.
I really had
like
to. I had to listen to that twice to make sure I heard it properly.
You did.
Never mind, I don't like it. The Constitution doesn't like it. Right. The government is absolutely without authority to do that. And quite frankly, the president's wrong on the length of time it would take. There are emergent duty judges sitting for emergent applications. It takes just 2.5 hours from the time you file the application until the time it's heard, 24/7 in all major cities. And I'm sure that's the case in Florida. So I hope that the president changes his mind on this. I can't imagine the Congress going along with this. I mean, Hillary Clinton never said such a thing. Barack Obama, who hated the idea of personal ownership of guns, never said such a thing. Seize first, due process later. What is this, Alice in Wonderland?
But maybe it's typical President Trump, which an opening salvo, which is fairly extreme. It's a negotiating position.
In
maybe
that
he's
respect,
jolting people so that you can get these quick judicial judgments.
So let me make the other argument, without betraying my fidelity to the Constitution. A good negotiator, and he knows this, always demands more than he expects to get.
Exactly.
So did he want to make a point that the White House has a new attitude about gun control? Boy, if he wanted to make that point, he made it in spades yesterday.
But he had to make it.
He does not have a majority in the Senate going along with this seize first and due process later.
You're still seething, okay. But
you thought of me the minute you heard him say
Of course I did. We booked you on that basis right immediately. But look, here's the president. He's sitting here, and he's brought left and right together in the White House. They're having the first civil discussion that I can remember. Not in Congress. You don't debate anything in Congress. You debate it right there.
These discussions are great.
They're
but
priceless.
Everybody in that room has done the same thing, taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, which means the Constitution as the Supreme Court has interpreted it. And the last time the court looked at guns, which was just 4 years ago, it is a natural, personal, human right, and the government must go through great steps to prove that a person isn't entitled to that right.
Well, there are great human rights concerns here that people could be held indefinitely, violates a constitutional privilege that people have. We have a constitutional challenge here where not only the National Defense Authorization Act, but the Patriot Act and other legislation have gradually moved America away from a robust freedom to a more limited freedom that is based on proscriptions by the government.
In his first interview since entering the White House, President Trump says he's open to torture and waterboarding, even though U.S. law prohibits it.
We're ineffective. During one of the debates, they asked Lying Ted about waterboarding. and he didn't want to answer because it was a very, it was a question. What do you think about waterboarding? And he didn't want to get involved because he was afraid it wasn't politically correct. And he gave a nothing answer, a weak, pathetic answer like we always give. They asked me, what do you think about waterboarding, Mr. Trump? I said, I love it. I love it. I think it's great. And I said, the only thing is we should make it much tougher than waterboarding. And if you don't think it works, folks,
Mr. President, you told me during one of the debates that you would bring back waterboarding and a hell of a lot worse.
I would do what I would do. I want to keep our country safe. I want to keep our country safe.
What does that mean?
When they're shooting, when they're chopping off the heads of our people and other people, when they're chopping off the heads of people because they happen to be a Christian in the Middle East, when ISIS is doing things that nobody has ever heard of since medieval times, would I feel strongly about waterboarding? As far as I'm concerned, we have to.
Let me read you a list of some of the techniques that were used by the CIA to get information. Waterboarding, hitting, bouncing suspects off walls, confining them in small spaces, loud music, sleep deprivation, nudity, keeping suspects in physical stress positions. If these were Americans being held overseas by a foreign power, would we have called that torture?
And I actually, John, want to challenge you on the word torture. My officers carried out the guidance that was provided to them in both administrations. And obviously that was different guidance. What's my view? My view was that those coercive techniques were the wrong thing to do. My view was that those techniques were inconsistent with American values. And for that reason, I don't think they should have been done.
Presidential candidate Donald Trump reigniting the immigration debate. He's calling for an end to birthright citizenship, which is automatic citizenship for anyone born on U.S. soil. But to do it would actually require a change in the Constitution.
In a stunning move to limit immigration, President Trump is setting to challenge a 150-year-old constitutional standard that anyone born in America is an American citizen. The president tells the political website Axios that he plans to sign an executive order to, quote, remove the right to citizenship for babies of non-citizens and unauthorized immigrants born on U.S. soil.
Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Have you talked about that with council?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen. With an executive order. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
that's
it's
a very
exactly what I was
interesting.
talking about.
I didn't think anybody knew that but me. I thought I was the only one. Jonathan,
I've got a good guess.
Time magazine is out with another cover criticizing the president. Take a look. It shows Mr. Trump looking into a mirror to see his reflection, just dressed in a royal robe and crown. The caption reads, "King Me." The artist says the portrait aims to capture the first 500 days of Trump's presidency.